competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening. Welcome to February 2nd, 2023, the zoning meeting of the Brevard County Commission. Before we start this meeting, do we have Pastor Mark Lewis here? Come on up, sir.
Thank you. Psalm 28:7 tells us, "The Lord is my strength and my shield. In him my heart trusts, and I'm helped. My heart exults, and with my song I give thanks to him." Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we look to you this evening in prayer as our strength, our shield, and our helper. We give thanks to you for your faithfulness and goodness, and we ask that you guide these proceedings in a way that gives you glory and honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. We have a quorum, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Commissioners, I need a motion to allow Commissioner Goodson to participate by phone.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Tabaya.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zonka. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
There you are, sir. Passes 5-0. Commissioner Zonka.
If you'll just stand and join
Thank
me
you,
in the
Madam
pledge,
Chair.
please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioners, I have minutes that need approved. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Zonka. Second by Commissioner Tabaya. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir. Passes 5-0. We're moving into the consent agenda. We have one item. Commissioners?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Zonka.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Feltner. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. I don't have public comment cards tonight, so we're going to move right into public hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item H1 is Robert J. Woodhouse requests a change of zoning classification from GU to AUL. Application number is 22Z00059. Tax account number is 2441057, located in District 1.
Sir, did you fill out a comment card? No, I didn't. Are you the applicant?
No, I'm speaking in my father's behalf.
Are you the one that's wanting to do the process tonight?
I'm wanting to complete the process or...
Wonderful. I think this might be fairly easy, but if you want to fill out a card, if you want to say something, but it's up in good old District 1, and I'm comfortable with it if someone wants to make a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Tabaya.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Zonka. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. All good?
You're all set?
That's it?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
Commissioner Goodson, just so you know, there's going to be a little bit of a lag on you there, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I realize that now, Madam.
All right, sir. We're going to move into item H2.
Item H2 is Michael C. McLain and Kelsey Barnes request a change of zoning classification from RR-1 to AU. Application number is 22Z00055. Tax account number is 2802103, located in District 5.
Commissioner Zonka, I have 2 cards on this, ma'am. Would you like to hear the cards first? Or
I
you-
would just like to make a disclosure.
Okay.
I think most of the correspondence by email has moved as part of the packet, but I did have a couple of disclosures just to bring about. On the 31st, I met with Sharon Dolan and her husband, I believe it was Brent, in my office for about an hour. In attendance was Tag Hawkins, Billy Prasad, myself, and Danielle Stern. We met for about an hour, and they were in opposition to the property. I see they have cards here, so they can talk about that. On the 31st, in the evening, I had a phone call with the applicant, Michael McLain, who explained what he wanted to do with the property. And I had a follow-up phone call with him on the 1st that lasted just a few minutes, same person, Michael McLain, to talk about the property. And that's it for my disclosures.
Thank you, ma'am. And Commissioners, forgot to mention it, but I know we always are aware of this before the meeting, but we send ours up electronically to the clerk's office. But if you have any, like Commissioner Zonka just did, you want to reveal those before we hear the items. Is the applicant?
No, I would ask for the applicant first if he wants to present the item, right?
Is the applicant here?
I'm sure.
Do we have the applicant here for item H2? Did you fill out a card, sir? A
Just make
comment
sure you
card?
don't.
I tell you, if you would want to come forward, but make sure you fill it out and give it to me before you leave.
She's pregnant.
Aw. We're going to let you go first, sir. If you would just give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Michael McLain. I live at 2405 Maple Street, Melbourne, Florida 32904.
Go ahead.
Does she need to give her name too?
I think I just got one of you at a time, but,
Okay.
okay.
I'd like to switch my property from RR1 to AU so that we may have chickens, roosters, breed chicks, have eggs, a couple goats, and an alpaca for a family farm.
Okay, you'll have 15 minutes, and if you'd like, we're going to bring other people up to speak, and then you can come back up if you'd like to at the end of it and give answers to questions that might have come up.
We're fine with that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Brent Dolan? How am I doing? Okay, good. Mr. Dolan, if you would state your name and address.
My name is Brent Dolan. I live at 2395 Maple Street, directly adjacent on the north side to Kelsey and Michael, and I'm here to object to the rezoning. This is not a personal issue against them. It is only about the noise of the roosters and the lack of trying to mitigate that noise. Despite the untruths that was said about us at the Planning and Zoning meeting, there is no ongoing dispute. The only dispute is the roosters and their noise. And they were cited only after there was a complaint about the roosters. If it was just, if it wasn't for the rooster noise, we wouldn't even be here. In 2020, we asked them repeatedly to do something about the roosters, but nothing was ever done. We've been accused of killing those roosters, but we didn't. We would never go on their property. I wouldn't do anything cowardly like that. Michael said it was probably raccoons. Over the next year, they acquired 4 more roosters, and they pinned them in a small area about 20 feet from our property line, which is about 50 feet from our living area, right in line with it. And they crow multiple times an hour, multiple times a day, and there's just no communication between us. If it wasn't for the constant crowing, there would be no issue, and the zoning would be no issue. So therefore, as it stands right now, my wife and I object to the rezoning. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sharon Dolan?
Sharon Dolan, 2395 Maple Street. So what was made out at the zoning meeting, that we are discontented neighbors, that is not true. We have just complained since they've lived there about 6 years, about 2 years ago. They got 2 roosters that continually, during our pandemic, we're all at home more, and we asked them to remove them, and they refused. We asked them 5 times to have a conversation, and they refused. Like Brent has said. We have other neighbors that are bothered. To the north of us, who owns 3 homes, he got up at the zoning meeting and talked. I don't think he was able to make it today. We have had a petition of 4 homes adjacent to these properties that hear the roosters constantly with no respect. And we feel, like Brent said, you know, we want to get along with them. We asked Michael, told Michael, you can talk to us about anything after they acquired the home. But in anger, Kelsey just got angry with us. And, you know, so that it's part of the communication problem. I feel that if someone has the privilege to have AU property, to have the responsibility of having animals, they have 3 acres, they have 2 acres maybe to farm, that they should think about the 9 homes that surround them. There are 9 homes of residents. I have 4 homes here that object to this. And it's mainly about that. I mean, you know, can you think about your neighbors? Let me just say in my conclusion, well, I got 3 minutes. You know, what we conclude is have respect for your neighbors, being disturbed by your actions, and you want the privilege to have multiple animals, which goes with AU, when you only have a small area, then you should be thoughtful and try to work things out and not take it personal. So when these roosters fly over your fence and I help you get it back and you don't even say thank you, this concludes you are incapable of being a respectful neighbor with animals. They don't even say thank you. And they weren't zoned for roosters, and they got 4 and put them right outside our door. I mean, this is just disrespectful. And like I said, other people have heard them, and they feel the same way. Patrick and Susan got up at the zoning meeting and spoke. They were unable to come today. There are 9 homes surrounding this property. We put up a 7-foot barrier outside a 6-foot fence along our front porch because in the evening we like to play some music for a couple hours to make the sound less for our neighbors. It's just a thoughtful thing that neighbors would do if someone asked you to, right? That's how we feel. So with these 4 roosters, and the noise is a lot, and there are 9 homes that are surrounding us. Think about them, be nice, be neighborly, and less angry. Thank you.
Thank you.
I object.
Can I ask you a question, Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
You are, right now are currently zoned AU, right?
Correct.
And just because everybody's not privy to the conversation we had in the office, and you currently run a nursery on your property?
Correct.
Okay.
For
thank you.
35 years. And we have never had a complaint about noise for 35 years. So I feel that when people are privileged to be able to work on their property for 35 years, that they should have some thoughts for their neighbors that are surrounding them. That is
Thank you.
all our thoughts.
Michael? I don't know if the board has any additional questions for you or if you want to respond to anything that was said, but it's your opportunity and you have the time, so.
I would like to respond. So with her original mention of the roosters when we first had 2, that she said that accused her of killing, which was not the case. One of them was killed by a fox, the other died. And unfortunately, my wife did say she assumes the neighbor may have had something to do with it, but we have no proof. We did move the roosters to the front property line. If you actually pull up my house on Google Maps, you'll see that the coop is currently on the front of my property because the picture is that old. And then after they died, my mom had me move the coop, she was the original owner of the property at this time, to the backyard, which is 20, 25 feet off the property line at the time.
We didn't have a rooster.
We didn't have roosters for a while. We bought a bunch of straight run chicks, ended up with more roosters. And at the time, they were in a chicken run off of that coop. We are in the process of trying to get a fence put in so that our property would be fenced in so we could free range them, so that they wouldn't wander around in other people's properties and we didn't have to worry about other people's animals getting into our stuff. We had a survey done in February 2nd. I have the receipt for that. Down our entire property. They share a 652-foot property line with us. And my mom had started cutting trees down the property line so that we could put our fence up using a tree service. After about a week, when we first started doing that, my property stakes that we paid to have placed down the line were thrown in my yard in one spot and moved in another spot. We did not see them move them, but I don't see why anyone else would move our property markers. We called the sheriff's on her for trespassing multiple times. I had to pay for a second survey down the line to replace the markers after she had been talked to. She had degraded me, called me names, and a bunch of other stuff because I wouldn't tell my mom to stop doing anything on the property line and removing trees. She even harassed the tree cutting service workers and threatened to give them bad reviews if they touched anything that she assumed was on her property, but our property line clearly dictated otherwise, and it has been a whole fight. The last call, which I have on my phone record, was on August 7th at 11 a.m. because the manager of the fencing company called me and told me his workers were being hounded and I needed to deal with my neighbor. So I called the sheriff in regards to that because the many conversations we have had over the entire year last year had led to arguments that led nowhere. It was just me being belittled and told I was a coward and a mama's boy. It got out of control to the point where I could not talk with her anymore and had the sheriff step in. My mom did most of the calls before that, decided not to trespass her for the times that she did step over the lines to take pictures and other things. We have footage, but that doesn't matter. And I am in the process of getting the documentation for those calls from the records office right now. I don't know when I'll get them. They set up to 30 days.
Commissioner Zonka, I'm just going to jump in real quick with this. You're trying to change your property to AU, and all the property around you is AU. I don't know where Commissioner Zonka is, because we do go heavily with the commissioner of that district, but I don't see why you shouldn't have an AU. But if you got a Ring camera, that might help you out a little bit to find out who's doing that, because you could go to civil court and get some of those costs back if somebody's doing that.
We don't really want to push the costs. That's why I didn't push anything on the matter with having to do a second survey. I understand that she's upset.
Well, if someone undid something I did and had to repay for it, I don't know who did it, but I was just going to drop that to you, Commissioner Zonka.
We have them now. After the event started occurring, we have them. We do have video of her crossing over the property line a few times. We showed that the sheriff, they said they would trespass her. At the time, it wasn't our property, it was his mother's. So she declined to do that, said she would give her one more chance. And that's when the property was turned over to us. And we have the fence up now, so it obviously hasn't been an issue.
I have tried to be very considerate. I had dirt put on there to build a berm so my water wouldn't go on her property, which was in our comments as a concern. And that was done before this application. I had to pay a little extra on the fence post to be longer because of the berm. I made sure I told the dirt guys and the people moving dirt, don't go over the property line with it. Keep it on my side, please. And I even measured every tree we cut in front of the neighbor to make sure that we weren't overstepping our 50% or more boundary line for if it was ours or theirs. I have been very considerate in that regards. And as for the roosters being penned near her, it will not be a concern because I have a newer coop further away. I can now free-range my chickens as they are currently because we don't have a chicken run now that our property is fenced in. And in regards to the petitions, I have gotten signatures from people south, east, and west directly off the property line and on some of the streets a little past that got notices saying that they're fine with it. And some of them even have roosters and chickens themselves. So I'm trying to be nice as possible with this.
And that was going to be my question. There are other roosters in your neighborhood?
Yes, so one of our neighbors, Mr. Durand and Mrs. Durand, directly next to us, straight across from the other property line that's an objection, took in 4 of our roosters for us. Well, 5, but one of them died because we couldn't have them anywhere because we were in violation. So they now currently have them, and that's 4 roosters there. And then directly on the opposite side of the RR1 zoning on our south side, I think they have 2 roosters. Tyler Durham, I believe was his name. I don't remember the address at the time, but he's also along Melvin and Linda Durand.
No, that's fine. And this property used to be AU in the past?
Yeah, our property apparently was AU back in 1984, 85. It did get switched with a flag lot at one point, and then when Lowe's bought it for my family, my great uncle and them, in I think 1999 or something, it got all switched to R1.
I'm good. Do you have anything else you want to add? You have more time if you want.
I think we're good for now, unless something else needs to be addressed.
And I had the chance to listen to the neighbors, and obviously a pretty lengthy phone call with you the other evening, and I would find it hard to deny you the same privilege that your neighbor has. And I know your neighbor has an issue with your roosters, but in reality, they're running a nursery on their property, and I think we even had that discussion with them when they were in the office. And I get a little leery on asking you to restrict your property because I'm not asking them to restrict theirs. So obviously, I would encourage you, anything you can do to improve that relationship if it's within your power. But I understand that there's a history there that clearly sometimes is talked about and sometimes isn't, and it's unfortunate. And I understand it even goes back to when your mom owned the property. So I'm fine with your application the way it stands, and I would support the rezoning. Make a motion to approve the request.
We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Tobias. Commissioner Felton, are you good, sir?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item H3 and 4, I believe these have been tabled, but y'all were going to read these into the record so we can move forward, correct?
I can read them into the record, ma'am.
Okay.
So item H3 is Austin A. and Kailey R. Mahan request a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use designation from NC to CC. Application number is 22SS00013. Tax account numbers are 2102061 and 3030132, located in District 1. This item has been tabled to the April 17th, 2023 LPA meeting and the May 4th, 2023 BCC meeting at the request of the applicant. Item H4 is Austin A. and Kailey R. McMahon requests a change of zoning classification from AU, excuse me, to BU2. Application number is 22Z00054. Tax account numbers are 2102061 and 3030132, located in District 1. This item has also been automatically tabled to the April 17th, 2023 P&Z meeting and the May 4th, 2023 BCC meeting at the request of the applicant.
Thank you, sir. Moving to item H5.
Item H5 is KVK Management and Remodeling Services, LLC, and JJ's Design and Construction requests a change of zoning classification from RU-1-9 to RU-1-11. Application number is 22Z00061. Tax account number is 2320171, located in District 1.
Commissioners, this is an easy one for District 1 as well. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Zonka,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Feltner. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item H6.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item H6 is Tomas, Manuel, Guillen, Arguelles, and Elsa F. Rodriguez Arriaga. Request to change the zoning classification from AU to RU-1-9. Application number is 22Z00058. Tax account number is 2419383, located in District 2.
Commissioner Goodson, I don't have cards on this, sir, so do you have a preference of what you'd like to do with this item?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for approval.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Goodson,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Feltner. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item H7.
Ronald Abbott, Abbott Manufacturing Housing, Inc., requests to change the zoning classification from BU-1 with an existing BDP to BU2 and the removal of an existing BDP. Application number is 22Z00060. Tax account number is 3010400, located in District 3. At the Planning and Zoning meeting on January 9th, that board voted to approve the request 7-2 with the removal of the existing BDP and adding a new BDP, retaining all BU1 uses and limiting the BU2 uses to boat and RV storage only.
Commissioner Tobias, I have one card, sir, and it's the applicant. You certainly can. Miss Kelly Hyvonen. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you. One second.
If you'd give your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Hyvonen with Land Development Strategies, and I'm here representing the property owner, Mr. Ronald Abbott. Tonight, I have a request for you on the property shown in front of you to rezone it from BU1 to BU2 for the desired future use of boat and RV storage, either indoor or outdoor. This location, I wanted to zoom out here real quick to talk about why. The subject property is where that yellow star is located, and as you can see, it's very near the Barefoot Bay community and also Snug Harbor. This community has thousands of mobile homes with high demand for boat and RV storage. What I did on that screen, anything outlined in red there, those are the on-site HOA locations where they're storing boats and RVs. Those are 100% occupied, and there's waiting lists on those. I've also highlighted two in, they're orange, but they look yellow up there. The yellow boxes are private boat and RV storages that are also 100% occupied and have waiting lists. What we're trying to do at this location is to provide for the needs of the Barefoot Bay and Snug Harbor communities, as those, we feel like no matter what goes here, they would be the primary users of this site. The property owner has had a conversation with the Barefoot Bay manager and some residents, and that's what they have consistently said is they're looking for boat and RV storage. So right now, that is what the market would support at that location. While the market conditions point us in the direction of boat and RV storage, in case conditions change, which conditions can change all the time, we do want the flexibility for the future to have other uses on that site. So during the Planning and Zoning Board meeting, our request was for BU2 with the removal of the existing BDP. Planning and Zoning Board requested a binding development plan that would allow us all the uses in BU1, plus specifically the use of boat and RV storage. We were caught a little off guard at that meeting, so after that meeting, we went back and went through all the uses in BU2, and we did come through with additional uses that we would really want to be allowed on that site in case market conditions change. They're the lower intensity type uses. Maybe so I don't have to read all of these into the record. If the commission desires to go the direction of not just allowing a BU2, but wanting to restrict those uses further, we would ask for the following uses to be allowed in BU2 as well. which are plant nurseries, wholesale, sale room and storage rooms. And then with conditions, it would be auto and boat sales and storage, garage or mechanical service, mini warehouses, mobile home and travel trailer sales, which that's very important because that would also be a great use at this location, and something that Barefoot Bay has kind of asked for as well. Also outside sale of mobile homes and warehouses. Again, ideally we'd request just a standard BU2, but if you desire to so restrict that further, we would be comfortable with this list of uses after having time to go through that. With that, anything we want to provide on this site, we're looking to serve the nearby communities, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Commissioner Tobias.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Were those limitations of that potential BDP on the BU2, were they presented during planning and zoning?
No, they specifically just said BU1 with boat and RV storage, and so we hadn't looked at what the uses were in BU2. So we said we'll move forward with that, but then we had a chance to look at the other uses that kind of really make sense for this site that don't have high intensity or, it's not a junkyard or recycling plant. It was more of those high intensity type uses that they didn't want to see from BU2.
Yeah, I thank you, Madam Chair.
Please.
I do understand, but my question is what's the rationale of those conditions on the BDP not being vetted by planning and zoning before they get here? So that's.
They brought it up at the meeting, so it kind of caught us off guard, and we didn't have the opportunity to go through the code at that time to see what other uses from BU2 might make sense, especially specifically mobile home and travel trailer sales. That would be another use that would really work here if the market conditions called for it.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think that probably it's best for planning and zoning to get a look at that again with those conditions. And I'm not opposed to them, but I just don't think it's fair to come with a change and not give the advisory board the ability to make that determination one way or another. I certainly don't want to step on their toes. That's a lot of hard work that those folks put into it. And again, I'm not opposed to this, but I certainly would like to get their opinion on those.
So would that mean going back to P&Z and then coming back to this board again?
I would feel more comfortable if again, I can't unilaterally make that decision, but certainly that would be my recommendation. I would like to hear where everyone else is. If they want to go forward, by all means. Again, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I just.
Gotcha. Commissioner Feltner, you want to weigh in, sir?
I think that's fair. So if you want to send it back to planning and zoning.
Could I just have a second to confer with my client? Because the other option is to just go with that single use, but that limits us so much. Would that be okay if I just had a second?
Please, Commissioner Zonka's about to ask you.
But that's not what you were asking for when you went to P&Z, right? You had an intended use.
We were just asking for BU2 when we went to P&Z.
But you claim you had an intended specific use, and now it's like the opportunities opened the door, so yeah, we want these possible 5 uses. That's the part that makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, we did explain that's what we want to do, but the market is all over the place right now. So that's what we intend to do, but we wouldn't want to close the door on especially like mobile home and travel trailer sales.
Commissioner Tobias, are you apt to approve it if they stuck with the P&Z recommendation tonight?
Yes, I would be with that.
So do you want us to bring this back up later in the meeting, and you come back up after you talk to people before we decide if we're going to table this, or?
Would it be possible for me to just have 30 seconds?
I tell you what I would like to do is table this and move to the next one, let you come up after the next one.
Okay.
All right?
If that's okay with you all.
Is that good, Commissioners? Okay. Then we'll have you come back in just a little bit, and we're going to move to item H8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item H8 is NDA Merritt Project Zenith LLC and SES Merritt Project Zenith LLC requests a change of zoning classification from BU-1 and BU-2 with 2 existing BDPs to PUD and the removal of 2 existing BDPs. Application number is 22Z00062. Tax account number is 242-8002, 242-8157, 242-8161, and 242-8163, located in District 2. So during the Planning and Zoning meeting, the Planning and Zoning meeting approved the request with 7 conditions, with the additional 8th condition to read, and they added a condition of 1 access to be provided on Harbor Woods Drive and 1 access to be provided on Fortenberry Road. Since then, the applicant has revised their application request the correct waivers. One of the waivers is for the open space, and the other is to reduce the number of access points that are required by code. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Goodson, we have a few cards here, sir. Did you want to make a comment before I call on cards?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We have 4 cards for the applicant, and then I have 6 other cards. Ms. Rezanka, you are starting tonight, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Good evening, Chairman Pritchett, members of the County Commission. My name is Kim Rezanka with Lacey Lyons Rezanka, 1290 Highway 1 in Rockledge, Florida. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. With me tonight is Ross Abramson. He is the contract purchaser and developer with Woodfield Acquisitions LLC. Also with me is Ken Good with Adkins Global. He is the engineer of record, will be the engineer of record, and James Taylor with Kimley Horn. He is the traffic engineer on the project. This is a request to change the zoning from BU1 and BU2. I actually got it. No, I'm good. To PUD with the recommendation of approval of the preliminary development plan and removal of 2 BDPs, which limited the property just to commercial uses. This is a planned apartment complex, luxury apartment complex of 370 units and with related amenities. We are not seeking to rezone the wetlands. Many of the public comments seem to think we are rezoning wetlands. Currently, zoning map shows us BU1 and BU2. There's no wetland zoning on this map. That's in your packet. Also, the future land use map is not changing. It is community commercial. So there could be very high intense commercial uses here at 60 feet tall because it's next to RU 230 with 15-foot setbacks. So what's proposed here, this luxury apartment complex, it's a much less intense use that could be on this property. This is the site of the old paintball field that also had a store and a skate park, outdoor skate park. Looking at your aerial map, you have the mall to the north, you have 2 banks to the west, you have a rental property to the south against Plumosa, you have 2-story condominiums that have been there since the early 80s. Then you have the Veterans Memorial Park to the east. This PUD, as you see in front of you, it has been revised several times. Mr. Abramson will explain that to you because we have heard some concerns about being too close to different areas, so everything has been pushed to the center. And if you look at the setbacks are pretty intense. Coming from Plumosa, which is on the west side, which is the small little square on the left side of the PDP, that is a wetland that will be preserved. That wetland distance from Plumosa to the first building is 316 feet. If you look from the south, the first building is 147 feet 9 inches from the south boundaries. The middle building is 95 feet, the setback from the south boundary. And then you have 116 feet from the east, the Harbor Woods Boulevard, which is a publicly owned right-of-way that used to have an easement for Harbor Woods. We're working with county staff on that whole issue because there's some question of who maintains it, but that's intended to be the access. This is intended to only have 2 accesses. One is directly off Fortenberry, and then one would be off Harbor Woods Boulevard, which is already an existing access for those condominiums. It's also an access point for parking for the Veterans Memorial Park, which is to the south of that Harbor Woods Boulevard. We are seeking 2 waivers. One is a waiver of 1.1 acre of open space from the 5 8.5 acres required pursuant to the county code. Applicant is providing 4.45 acres of open space with a requirement of 5.5. This was because the PUD allows you to preserve and to have flexibility, so we're preserving the wetlands, not impacting the wetlands. And the Veterans Memorial Park, as you all know, is a world-class amenity. It's got playgrounds, it has walking trails, it has nature trails, it has access to the water. So with that next door, the amenities necessary at this apartment complex is not as necessary. Waiver 2 is seeking a waiver of 1 access point from the 3 access points. We were unaware of that. Once you go above 350, you're supposed to have another access. The only potential access would be to Plumosa, which none of the residents want. No one wants increased traffic on Plumosa. Also, we would likely have to impact that wetland, which I just described earlier, and the developer does not want to impact the wetlands. We initially had asked for a setback waiver, but we found out that's unnecessary, so that's been withdrawn. We initially started with 5 waiver requests. We're now down to 2 waivers. The MIRA board reviewed this on December 8th of 2022. They unanimously recommended approval. That report is in your agenda packet and the reasons for their approval. P&Z board reviewed this on January 9th, also recommended approval unanimously, and they asked for an 8th condition, and that 8th condition was only 2 access points, one on Fortenberry and one on Harbor Woods Boulevard, which kind of conflicts with the staff 1 point, the 1 through 7 conditions. But again, those are site plan issues. Those aren't intensity or density issues. Those are site plan issues, which will be reviewed in depth by county staff. There was a community meeting that was held on January 4th. We sent out 150 invitations. 9 people showed up. They were concerned about traffic, intersection safety, stormwater, all the things that all people are concerned about with new development. And these are all things that will be addressed during the site plan. We do have a traffic engineer here who's going to discuss a little bit about traffic. And we also have Ken Good can answer any stormwater questions you have, but your staff is going to review that. We initially believed that this was all in the Veterans Memorial Basin. It turns out part of it drains south to the Aurora Park Basin, but Ken Good has spoken to staff and they're willing to bring this all in to the Veterans Park Storm Basin, which will actually improve any flooding at Harbor Woods or anything that drains into that park. And again, Ken Good can explain that to you, but again, that'll be worked out during staff review. There are many public comments that you've seen, many emails. There's really only about 10, although there's about 50 pages. Most of those people don't even live near here. It looks like a mass email was sent out, and so they'll all say you're rezoning wetlands, which you're not, and they're worried about traffic. And we'll address those public comments as they come through. But I do also want to show you the renderings. These have been updated to show the 5 stories because initially we believed there were going to be some 5 and some 3. These are all 5 stories with elevators. So this is what the rendering will look like. This is actually looking from the mall, looking south. And those have been provided to you. And then that's another rendering viewpoint.
If I may, Madam Chair, so Attorney Rezanka, you understand that Commissioner Goodson is only available by phone here, so anything you want to introduce as evidence, it needs to be already in the record, or else you may not want to rely on it here.
He's seen them.
Okay.
He has seen these. We met with Commissioner Goodson a week ago Monday, and he has seen all these.
All right, thank you.
So there's nothing new. And with that, I would turn this over to Ross Abramson. He is with Woodfield Acquisitions, who've been in business for 17 years and have completed 70 luxury apartment complexes. He's going to talk about a little bit of the changes that have been taken place that Mr. Goodson is aware of as he's seen them.
Hi, Ross Abramson with Woodfield Development. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration for this project. I first wanted to back up to give you a little bit of a story of our path to get into Brevard County. So a few years ago, we contracted a property in Palm Bay. We have now closed on that property. We're in for site plan approval. We're hoping to break ground this year. That'll be about a 450 unit project, about $125 million of total investment in that project. So we're really excited about Brevard County and want to expand on our investment here with your support. We only develop Class A luxury multifamily projects. And so that's really what we're proposing here. So I guess the one change that Kim mentioned I should bring up is, I'll point out here, one of the concerns from the neighbors of their experience in the park. There was the broad side of one of the buildings was facing the park, so we flipped the two bottom right buildings, Type 1 and Type 2, so that now the short side of that Type 2 building, right here, would be facing the park. So it really allows for a much better experience when you're in that park. And you can see that from the rendering. That's this here. This used to expand down further to the south and was a little bit more of a mass for people experiencing the park. So that was one of the biggest changes that we made recently to accommodate. And we think that this is a fantastic site plan. We've engaged top-tier consultants. This architect MSA is one of the best multifamily specialist architects in the state, and we have excellent landscape architects and interior designers and engineers, and we're really proud of the plan that we put forth today. Mm-hmm.
James Taylor is going to speak briefly because there were traffic comments and we wanted to address those.
Good evening. For the record, James Taylor, Kimberly Horn Associates. I'm the transportation engineer for the site. We did a traffic study for this based on the methodology of Brevard County staff, met with that staff, presented a methodology, and then did the analysis based on that approved methodology by both parties. The site is generating about 150 trips during the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour. And then we're kind of in a gridded system here where you can go east or west. Once you distribute those trips out, which we did per DOT's adopted travel demand model, we didn't find any new deficiencies as a result of these project impacts. No turn lanes needed along Fortenberry. There were some concerns about the impacts to Plamosa. At Fortenberry and Plamosa, that intersection currently has 3 approach lanes headed westbound, and that intersection overall is operating at a acceptable level of service, not even today, but also in the build-out. The one intersection in the study area that we did find was a background deficiency, not because of the project, was State Road 520 and Fortenberry, or sorry, excuse me, not Plamosa, but thank you. And as a result of the coordinated timing along State Road 520, we don't recommend any improvements there. DOT will prioritize the primary street direction. And if we did look at a scenario where we reduce the signal timing, and we can get that to work at adopted level service D, but again, that's really DOT's call, and I don't expect that they would want to coordinate the entire corridor for that one intersection. I'll be here for Q&A as it comes up. Thank you.
Mr. Zonka, did you want to retain the time after the other comment cards, or what would you like to do?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Unless you have questions now. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chris Wallace?
Good evening. My name is Chris Wallace. I live at 340 Antigua. We also own a home at 130 South Bel Air. So I've lived in that neighborhood 36 years, whether it was at my parents' house or at my own home. And in that time, I've seen flooding that's been catastrophic. The county has come in and yes, they repaved the roads, but we still have standing water. Whenever it rains, I have to go out in waders or bare feet and shorts to clean the drains just so that the water drains out at some reasonable level. Along with that, the pump station is right there, and the county owns that. So My real issue here is, where's all that waste going to go from this new construction? Plus, we already have the new construction going to come online over by the airport. So the pump station that's currently there that has to get everything pumped out of it during every hurricane. The last 2 hurricanes, the county had to run trucks continually, pumping out the waste and carting it over to Cocoa or whichever facility they were taking it to have it processed. That is going to be definitely impacted by this project. They can say they're not impacting the wetland, but unfortunately, putting that much more concrete in, no matter how much you try to force it over to the Veterans Park or how much plumbing piping that you put in, water's always going to come to the lowest level. And unfortunately, our neighborhood's 60 years old. Harbor Woods is 40 years old. Penn Place, another one that's going to be impacted by where they want to send that water. I've got over 100 petitions. I've got a petition signed by over 100 people impacted in all those areas. So I'd like to give that to Madam Chair, if I may.
Thank you, sir. And we'll give this to the clerk for record.
So the problem is yes, we need development. Yes, Merritt Island needs development. But hurting and impacting us on our ingress and egress, hurting us on our neighborhood's a cut through. There's a cut through that everybody uses it to go from Plumosa out to State Road 3. So in the past, we've petitioned and got speed bumps put in. Okay, that's just now, they just speed up and hit them and see how much air they can catch. So our kids are out there, now you add this project in, how much more traffic is that going to bring into our neighborhood? Plus, like I was saying, 60-year-old neighborhood, we're built at a different level. Now this new development's going to go in, it's going to be at least 4 foot higher, and then they're going to put 5-story buildings and all that blacktop and pavement. That's going to negatively impact us, no matter how they try to cherry coat it or sprinkle coat it or whatever way you want to put it. It's going to negatively impact our neighborhood. It's going to change the way that we have to live, because I already fear our neighborhood is like a lake. It's like a bowl. Back in the very back part where Barbados and Andros, Mr. Goodson unfortunately isn't here, but in Bel Air neighborhood, Barbados and Andros come to a curve. It's one street that turns, and it basically becomes a lake back there. I live at the corner of Antigua and Carib, which is the main street coming in. That turns into a lake. I mean, just last year, it ripped the bumper off my van because the water was so high. My child tried to come home and rips the front of the bumper off because there was so much water that, and you know, they're inexperienced. And that's my own child. So anybody else that comes in the neighborhood, they have the same issues. We've had cars flooded out, and they're totaled because the water is that deep. So you get all these other people that are coming in that don't know the area, and they come down that. How many cars are we going to have flooded out that we have to wait for the tow truck to come get after the water recedes? And truthfully, that's every time it rains a heavy rain. It doesn't have to be a hurricane. It could just be a hard afternoon thunderstorm. So myself, as well as those other 100 people, we're all opposed against this project. And it's not that we don't want new building. The other thing is Mira, they don't speak for me. They're not elected. Nobody, I didn't elect them to their positions, so they don't speak for me. So for them to say that they approve this project, well, who gave them my, who gave them my words? Who gave them my chance to say anything? I don't agree with the project, and so that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I believe it's Phil Cohen. Did you write Phil down? I meant you have to say your name for the record.
Phil Cohen.
Good, I got it. All right.
You got it.
All right.
Thank you, Board of Commissioners. I'm writing you. My name's Phil Cohen. I own the property to the south of this project on Plumosa Street, 420 and 426 South Plumosa. I am against this project as slated if you guys are willing to grant them the waivers that they're asking for. I'm going to start with a letter that I wrote to all of you commissioners. Mr. Feltner and Mr. Tobias' emails blocked my email, so I'm going to read it to everybody now. I'm writing this email to urge you not to approve the zoning changes for this project requested on parcels number, et cetera, the 4 parcels, with all of the waivers in which they have requested. This huge development is being requested through waivers in a manner that does not respect the current demands of the county zoning for a project of this scale. As a property owner adjacent to the project on the south, I oppose the project as they are presently requesting it of you. The players in the project have the options and the means of meeting all of the county code requirements to do a project of this scale. I strongly oppose it without meeting all the necessary requirements presently on the books in Brevard County for a project like this. The waivers they're requesting are not necessary, and it wouldn't be fair to the county and all its present tax-paying residents and the people surrounding, because this is what they're asking for. They are 1.1 acres shy of meeting enough green space for the county for a dense property of this size. 1.1 acres. Yes, they have wetlands they're gonna keep, but they're still shy 1.1 acres. They're requesting some setbacks of the buildings that are too close, and they plan on developing parking all the way up to the property lines. As Mr. Wallace said, all those areas flood all the time. I get floodwaters from my neighbor to the south of me because of their entrance road at Sir Walter's Uniforms. They don't have enough runoff and water retention on their property, so it runs off into my property. They're requesting, and this is a big one, only 2 entrances and exits. A development of this size requires 3 per the county code. This is a huge emergency and safety concern. Not to mention, all the traffic in and out of the complex would then be overrun on Fortenberry Road, which at this point has trouble handling the traffic in its present state without turning lanes into that area. The one entrance they want to use to Harbor Woods is one way in and one way out. So if they put an entrance on Harbor Woods Boulevard, then without cutting through the island in the middle, they're going to have to turn to the south and do a U-turn to get out to Fortenberry Road by the mall. I also understand that that strip of property in between their property and the county right-of-way of Harbor Woods Boulevard is like a no man's land. Nobody owns it. It has some beautiful oak trees on it. I'm afraid all that would go away as well. So they're also requesting and planning this project without any means of water runoff retention on their own property. I believe that's absurd. They're planning on piping every bit of water runoff from a 10-acre project like this into the lake at the Veterans Park. That lake at Veterans Park was built to handle all the runoff of the future development that's already in the plan for Veterans Park. There's supposed to be an amphitheater, parking, and other things. The mall, they have their own water retention on their property. You have parking, you have buildings, you need to retain the water on your own property. That goes with Mr. Wallace's concerns of the flooding everywhere. So all the area is very low lying, presently has major water runoff issues without any buildings and pavement at the present time. To consider a project like this without them handling their own runoff would be a gross misstep on the county's behalf. They propose to use that lake, which was created to handle Veterans Park, and it's already on the books for the new development, as I mentioned. My other concerns, and they should be yours as well, is as follows. Merritt Island sewage and wastewater infrastructure's ability to manage a project this size. The pump station on Plumosa Street is already overloaded, has ongoing issues in keeping up with the present volume of waste as it is.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. You got a good part to cut off right there, and I've just got to keep everybody time. Thank you.
All right,
Mr. Greg Henderson? Oh, sir, would you hold back? The applicant has a privilege here of asking you some questions.
Questions, please. Sure. Mr. Cohen, I'm showing you a property appraiser's map, is that your property?
That is my property.
And the property to the south is also yours?
Yes, it is.
What's being stored on that property?
There's some trailers and buildings that I'm working with the county on right now because I have a code enforcement issue on it, and I'm cleaning that up.
I didn't know that. I just
No,
knew there was a
that's
lot of
okay.
storage.
Yep.
And these are rental properties, correct?
It's an investment property. It's not a rental property.
But you do rent them?
No.
Okay. All right. So
I don't know where-
on January 9th, you spoke at P&Z, and you said you had no problems with the project if done correctly.
If done correctly.
Okay. But you didn't state any of these concerns you had at P&Z, did
Well,
you?
my concerns are every time I come to zoning, I've talked to zoning and planning about my property and future development on it in the past. And every time I talk, like, Mr. Cohen, that doesn't meet code, you can't do this. Oh, Mr. Cohen, this doesn't meet code, if you want to do that, you can't do this. So I have to follow the rules and meet all the codes of Brevard County. And it appears this big conglomerate's wanting to come in and say, well, we can't meet the codes presently, so we'd like all these waivers. But they do have the means of meeting all the requirements. There is options on the table for them to get that additional green space, have an additional entrance and exit on Plumosa, which would make that third entrance and exit. The only reason I'm against it is if they don't meet what the code requirements are. If they're willing to step up and acquire the additional properties to be able to meet all the code requirements, I don't have a problem with the project at all.
Commissioner Zonka has a
I have a
question.
question.
Is that right?
Can I just ask him a quick question? What do you mean they have options to meet the code for the property?
They have options to purchase adjoining proprities.
So
I've-
you're suggesting that they purchase property from another private person, or are you?
I have spoke with Ross, and I have spoken with the parties involved and told them if they would want to purchase more property to be able to meet all these needs, we can go into negotiations, and I would be willing to put my 1.5 acres.
So your property?
Yeah, if they were willing
You're
to do
suggesting
that.
they would, okay.
That's the only other adjoining
That's where I figured this was
property
going. Thank you.
that's available.
Ms. Rezanka, you're back on, ma'am.
And have they
Madam
denied
Chair.
your offer, Mr. Cohen?
No, they have not denied any offer. They said they would consider it, but they don't think they need it. So if we grant them waivers, they won't need it.
Okay.
If we
Commis-
don't grant them waivers, then
Okay.
maybe they would have
Commissioner
enough
Goodson, sir,
Yes, I have one question.
you're on.
Do you, on your property, have retention ponds to handle your water?
My property was built in 1952, and there is a swale behind the house that handles the runoff that comes off of that house. Now, if I was to build any other property on it, I would increase the water retention, just like the county requires everybody else.
But right now, you have no retention to hold water before it goes into a swell, correct?
The swale, yes, the property itself will hold water.
Correct. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Greg Henderson? If you'd state your name and address, sir.
Hi, my name is Greg Henderson. I live at 285 Andros. Well, where to start? I guess I have a couple of issues here. One is I'm pretty ignorant about this. I live within, 1,200 feet, give or take, of a fairly major development going in. I only heard this by chance that, hey, there's a petition going around. Oh, about what? Oh, a major development going in just down the road. Oh, really? Haven't heard anything about it. It would have been nice to have some information about a major development that would impact our quality of life. I mean, that's neither here nor there right now, but just putting it out there. Did she have any notifications? You said 120?
150.
150?
I'm sorry,
Well,
sir, you have to direct
I'm
everything to
sorry.
the chair. Thank you.
I didn't get one. I live pretty close. I live in the corner of one of these temporary ponds that you heard some talking about, the flooding. This happens all the time. And this is my concern. I mean, first, I don't know enough about this to know whether it's a good thing economically or, you take everything considered. I don't know. I'm ignorant. I completely admit that. But I do know I've got concerns about flooding. I've got concerns about our infrastructure, sewage. I've got concerns about traffic. But I can't have proper concerns because, I mean, where was the information on this? This is a major development right next to Bel Air, Merritt. Does the community matter here to the effect it's going to have on us? That's a big part of my concern. I don't know. Is this going to impact us negatively? I don't know. I think it might. But I guess the only thing I can say here is I beseech you guys and madam, gentlemen, you represent our interests. And I can only say that you hold, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen. All I can ask is you hold their feet to the fire and make them do it correctly. Make sure they handle the runoff. Make sure they handle the sewage. Make sure they handle any improvements to the basic infrastructure that's not going to negatively impact our community of the hardworking folks that, you're probably not getting many folks here because, everyone in my neighborhood, we work all day. Right? I just happened to be off this afternoon. It's like, well, I should probably come, just because I heard about it offhand. I heard about this a couple of days. So I can't say I'm adequately prepared to speak on this at all. All I can do is present my concern that you folks represent us in this and make sure this is done correctly and that all of the issues that might affect us and the community, that might affect our lives adversely, to please make sure it's not going to happen, just to make someone, we need development. I agree. Sounds like it's going to be a really nice place, but not at the expense of the neighborhoods that are already there. That's all I ask.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for
Sir, just so you know, sir, just so you know that is also the concern of this board. What they're doing right now is changing zoning, but all those items still have a long path to get through to make sure it's done correctly. Mr. Calkins, was this properly posted and advertised? Please don't talk out there, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Florida statute requires that we advertise in a paper 15 days before the public hearing. That was done. It also requires that we post the property. The property was posted on Thorntonberry Avenue. And then as a courtesy, we send out notices to all the property owners within 500 feet of the property boundary.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we
that.
followed our procedure. We didn't have anything.
Yes,
Miss
ma'am.
Sandy Wilk? Miss Sandy Wilk, are you here? Okay, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me speak for 5 minutes, which
Name
I
and
thought I
address?
only had. I only thought I had 3 minutes.
Your name and address for me?
It's Sandy Welk, 420 Catamaran Drive, number 94. I live in Harbor Woods. Thank you. This, I only had about 2 days to prepare for this, okay? And so this is just a short list of my observations, if this is allowed to go through as it stands. There will be a substantial increased volume of traffic with, according to the plans, 664 parking spaces. That's a potential of 664 vehicles coming in and out. There is just only over 1 acre of land designated for green areas, and this is insufficient for the number of units. The runoff of water from the wetlands will increase the flooding in the area, and I've personally witnessed to the west side of Harbor Woods, the last hurricane, where it was completely flooded out. I saw fish swimming in the parking lot to try to find their way to something. It was just unbelievable. The decrease of water pressure from the increase of residents next door, where we already are low in pressure as it is. Potential of traffic accidents from the backup of vehicles waiting to go through their gated entrance. Risk to school children waiting for the school bus at the intersection of Harbor Woods Boulevard and Fortenberry with this increase of vehicles. The loss of frontage signage for Harbor Woods. There has been nothing that I've heard spoken about this to be changed. And how is it going to impact people finding us in the development? The increase of noise from the property. The increase of carbon monoxide and pollutants from all of these vehicles. The destruction and decrease of vegetation for migrating birds and wildlife. Aesthetically, this will be an eyesore for anyone who has appreciated a park-like setting on the north side of the Harbor Woods property, where some residents have lived here for decades. There is a gentleman by the name of Paul Diorelli. I don't know if he's here tonight, but he is listed on sunbiz.org as a registered agent for the SES Merritt Project Zenith, LLC. He heads up zoninglawgroup.com, where he has a case study that begins on page 13, which states, in part, a community relations strategy to help the neighbors embrace the change as positive is essential. In some cases, no amount of design accommodation will pacify the neighbors, but a financial contribution to a homeowners association to help them meet an unfunded need or participation in delivering other off-site improvements or amenities of import to the neighborhood can go a long way toward overcoming neighborhood concerns. I object to this property 100%, not only as it stands, but even if the waivers are approved. This is not something I want in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Ryan Jordan? Hi, sir. If you state your name and address.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Ryan Jordan of 275 East Lauren Court, Merritt Island, Florida, which is a Bel Air subdivision. I'm really concerned about this proposed building complex with 370 units being right in the area. I moved to Merritt Island because I really enjoyed the family aspect of it and how we just have smaller neighborhoods and people who are really in tune with the neighborhood. I believe that this residential complex will increase traffic, which is already pretty bad in the area. It's going to have a huge impact in draining and potentially could increase crime. So I'd sincerely ask all of you to kind of consider this and think about how it can be improved, or think about what our neighbors, the neighborhoods around the area, our concerns and opinions. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Miss Becky Kelly. And after Miss Kelly, we're going to have Brian Bell. Miss Kelly, if you would state your name and address, ma'am.
Sure. My name is Becky Kelly. I live at 140 Carob Drive in Bel Air subdivision. I've owned property in the Bel Air subdivision for over 20 years. It's a very calm and peaceful place. I'm not a public speaker, so
You're doing fine, hon.
I walk Fortenberry and Plamosa daily with my dog and enjoy the peace and safety. The additional traffic will take away from that peace and safety. Earlier in my life, I've lived in Houston, Texas, Santa Clara, California, so I know what congestion is. I know how loud it can get. If that apartment complex is built, we're going to have Courtney on one side of us and the apartment complex on the other. We're going to be in the middle of a sandwich noise. It's not fair. I moved to Merritt Island to avoid congestion. The added traffic and the congestion makes me worry for my current lifestyle and safety. This evening, I've noticed that nobody hears from Merritt Ridge. Merritt Ridge is just south, butts up against Bel Air subdivision. It's just south of us. And they have a bigger flooding issue than we do. Sincerely, it's a serious condition. I do not want this to come into fruition. I know that Merritt Island needs to grow, but I don't think this is the way we want to grow. I don't think we want to integrate 5-story apartment complexes on our little island and take away from our lifestyle. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brian Bell.
Good evening. I'm Brian Bell, and I live at 220 Andros Drive with my wife, Mindy Robbins. We've lived there approximately 15 years. We've lived in Brevard for 25 years. And we ask that you deny this rezoning claim, the rezoning request for these parcels, for all of the reasons you've already heard, and then some. We look to you as our community leaders to make good decisions about the quality of our lives. Let me share with you my neighborhood and the scene in my neighborhood in Bel Air on Andros Drive, which you've heard about previously from these folks. When it rains hard, we walk out into the street. Our driveways are backed up with water between knee-deep and waist-deep water into our driveways. The whole street in both directions, as far as you can see, is this river of water that's still. We're afraid to drive our cars through it to crack the engine blocks and destroy our vehicles. The sidewalk in front of my home has a construction barrier that's been there for almost 2 years. They put it up for refurbishing the sidewalk that has irregularities to the point where people can't walk down it. They have to walk down the street to have a smooth walk and a safe walk. We call the county and ask them, what's the deal with the barricades? Oh, well, that's a project that we lost the rest of the funding for, so don't expect us to come out and complete that. In the meantime, the hurricanes come through. We have to go out and get these heavy metal barricades off the sidewalk, bring them into our home to protect them because our money paid for these, plus we don't want them whirling through the neighborhood with the hurricane winds damaging our properties. This is the quality of life that in our late 60s, my wife and I have to live day in and day out from our nice, sleepy, quiet, peaceful neighborhood of Bel Air. On the one side of us is Route 3. Route 3, as you probably know, narrows down into one lane. And right as it narrows down into one lane is the turn into Carib, the entryway into our Bel Air subdivision. There's a commercial project that was completed on the right side of the road, the west side of Route 3, just as the road narrows into one lane, with no regard to ingress or egress in or out of this commercial property. The lanes weren't modified at all to allow traffic to go in and out of this commercial property. And yet, everybody has to stop for someone turning left into our community. On the other side of our community is the only other entryway, which is going to be subject to all of the additional traffic of this newly proposed apartment complex. Am I correct also in understanding there's 20% Section 8 housing built into this? Is that correct?
Sir, it's your public comment time. We're not answering questions right now.
All right. We hope that you will make good decisions that we in our neighborhood will have to live with for many, many years to come. We're not in favor of this. I belong to the East Merritt Island Homeowners Association, and we are organizing ourselves to retain legal counsel to pursue this if you decide to go along with their proposal. It's not a healthy change for us, and I have to say that we all like progress, but no one seems to like change. We get it. This is not a good move. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. That is the end of our cards, and sir, I want to assure you whatever we do tonight will be legal. Commissioner Goodson, sir, Ms. Rezanka, did you want to come up first before?
Just to answer a few questions. Again, Kim Rezanka on behalf of the applicant. Again, thank you for your time listening to all of this. I do want to start with Mr. Bell. These are luxury apartments. These are not Section 8 housing. There are not 20% set-asides. There's no set-asides for affordable housing of any shape or form. Again, I'd like to explain a little bit, as I know the commissioners know, but we're not asking for something, it's not a variance, it's not something that's out of the ordinary. The PUD allows for flexibility and asks for these waivers. We're not asking for waivers to height, we're not asking for waivers to setback, we're asking for waivers to an entranceway, so there's not more entranceways on Fortenberry. We could have 2 on Fortenberry, we could have 1 on Plumosa, might impact a wetland. The idea is not to impact Plumosa at all, which is where Bel Air and Merritt Ridge enter onto. So the PUD encourages and permits variations in development by allowing deviations. So waivers and deviations are the same, as you know. We're asking for 2 deviations, 1 to the access, and the other is there's no setbacks, there's no height waivers. The only waiver is, as I discussed before, and that is to the open space. We have 4.45 acres of open space, not 1 acre, as Ms. Wilkes, I believe, stated. So we're asking for a 1.1 variance to open space so we can save the wetlands, and so we don't have, and also because of the Veterans Park. The Veterans Park was indeed developed for more than just the Veterans Park. It was to take all the stormwater from 520, as you all know, and I'm sure you're very aware of it because you all were sitting here through that process. So there is capacity there. Mr. Good is working. If that doesn't work, your conditions require us to change the plan, make it less dense, and put stormwater on site. But that was the intent, was to allow stormwater to go to that process. All of what you've heard regarding traffic, emergency, what belongs to the county. There's no vacant strip of land. That all belongs to the county. And this is something that has to go through site plan, final development plan. The county will review all this. It will meet the codes, ask for the 2 deviations, and it will meet performance standards. I do want to bring to your attention the conditions, which my client has no problems with. But condition 2 was to depict 3 entrances, yet P&Z asked for only 2 entrances. And condition 6 was to provide an updated PDP, correcting the waivers, which we've done. We have no problems with you approving all of the conditions to make it simple, but we have met what the code requires. We've asked for 2 deviations, and we ask that you approve the rezoning to PDP, approve the preliminary development plan with the waivers as requested, and the removal of 2 BDPs. Those 2 BDPs were for a golf course and for a skate park, and those commercial uses only. And with that, we're here to answer any questions.
Ms. Rezanka, you guys are understanding the staff 7 conditions they want to make, and you're in agreement?
They're fine. We've already
Okay.
met 2 of them, and one of them's not appropriate. If you want us to, if you grant the waivers to 2 accesses, then that condition 2 doesn't make sense.
Right, but that's good because the staff's going to be able to help make this project.
Right. So
within what
again,
we
if
need
you
to.
approve the waivers to, and one of them being to the 2 access points instead of 3, then that would be unnecessary.
Okay, I want to let Commissioner Goodson jump in because I don't want to get in his way, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, engineering there. Question.
Sir, I'm losing you a little bit here.
Okay, is engineering there so I can ask them a question?
The engineer, sir.
Yeah, our county engineer, he's there.
Our county engineer, we have Mr. Calkins and Mr. Jeffries here, sir.
Okay, here's my question to someone. Bel Air right now floods. Where does that water go as an outfall? Which ditch does it go to?
John, I know you're going to jump in here first.
Bel Air drains through a ditch system and pipes and goes into the Alum Pond, which is located south of the proposed project and west of the Veterans Memorial Park.
Okay, my question would be, if this is built and they retain their water on site, or the veterans, it is not going to correct the flooding in Bel Air, correct?
It will not.
Correct. Now, Bel Air was built prior to retention ponds. It was built in the 60s and all that. So they've got to follow St. John. They've got to follow the county, and they're not going to be able to put water back on Bel Air, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Goodson, I'm going to ask, I don't have any other lights up from the commissioners. Sir, what's your pleasure?
I would like a motion for approval as long as they follow the code and the water does not come back on Bel Air.
Okay, sir, are you good with putting the 7 staff conditions that they're agreeing to as well on the PUD?
Yes, I am.
Okay, now I have a motion. Do I have a second? And a removal of 2 existing BDPs as well, sir, correct?
Correct, Madam.
Okay.
May I ask, Madam Chair, does that include approval of the 2 requested waivers, sir? The waiver to the open space requirement and the waiver to the 3 access requirement?
My motion would do the 3 access requirement. The waiver for the green space, I would like for them to do everything possible to meet that waiver. So that's my motion.
Commissioner Goodson, on the agenda, I think they broke it down to just asking for items 3 and 4 on ours, correct, ma'am? Is that correct? Commissioner Goodson, let me make sure I get all this right for you very clearly. And Ms. Rezanka, what were the 2 things you're still requesting, because you got rid of 2 of them? So if you'd let
We're requesting approval of the PUD, approval of the PD, the preliminary development plan, with the 2 waivers. The 2 waivers are 1 to an access, so we'd only have 2 access points. And then we'd have a waiver to the open space of 5.5 acres required to allow a waiver of 1.1. The waiver is 1.1, so allow us to keep 4.45. The staff has requested 8 conditions. One of those conditions is that we give a PDP with the right waivers, which we've done. And then the other, that was number 6. Number 2 is that we depict 3 entrances on the county roadway, which we've only depicted 2 because planning and zoning recommended only 2.
Yeah. Okay, Madam Chair, I will make that motion to include those 2 waivers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Zonka. All right, no more lights. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. I do want to make one comment. We already voted on that. I know this project you said isn't having any workforce housing or anything, but that would have just made it a little bit sweeter, by the way, because we're working very hard on that. And I want to mention, people say Section 8, all this is young families that are having a hard time. They're not bad people, and I'm always in favor of that as we help young families find safe living. So I just wanted to make that comment real quick, but thank you. Okay, we are finished.
Yes, we got it here.
Oh, Miss Kelly, I'm sorry, I almost forgot about you. Come on up, ma'am. Commissioner Tobias, you're on, sir. Go ahead.
Oh. Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to give Ms. Kelly the opportunity to convey what she heard from her client.
Just a second. If you guys will wait just a minute to go, we're almost done, and we really got to keep the meeting moving. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I'll just jump right in. So we appreciate the opportunity to give us a chance to discuss this case with my clients, and we find the request and recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board to be acceptable.
So I'd make a motion to approve as requested by P&Z.
Have a motion?
I'll second.
I have a second by Commissioner Zonka. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. All right, we are now done with public hearings, and I still have no public comment cards, so we're going to move into board reports. And we have a sitting-in county manager. Sir, do you have any report?
No report.
Okay, thank you. County attorney?
No report, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Goodson, do you have a report, sir?
No, ma'am, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Tobias?
No report, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Feltner?
I have no report.
Commissioner Zonka?
No report.
I have just one item I want to mention. I had someone come into my office, actually Mr. Slusher, and he had mentioned Mr. Rob Kimklowski has moved out of the area. So I want to make you aware of that, and county staff's looking in on it, but he's no longer around, so we might have to repick a new representative for the Affordable Housing Board. Mr. Fatner, did you want to say something?
I talked to him a couple of days ago. He didn't say that.
Yeah, I don't think he lives in the county anymore, just so you know.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Somebody ratted him out, so,
Oh.
okay.
Well, he didn't say that. Someone
No.
else said that. So, how about I reach out to him?
That would be good.
Did that? Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. And on that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.